to be accountable, to bring us the updates, to think through it in a way that people who are doing it casually can't, and then just build out the measures. So that's really where we are. Ben, are we still friends?
You are.
All right.
That was brilliant. So we are now halfway done and right on the glide path. No pressure to our final two presenters, Gil Betts from Metro United Way, here to talk to us about early childhood.
My presentation should be really short because the mayor used about 8 slides that I intended to talk in his opening comments. So this should be go quickly. I'm Gil Betts, the Chief Strategy Officer at Metro United Way, and acting CEO in Joe Toland's absence. Joe sends his regrets, but he is doing very well from his recent bone marrow transplant. He is excited and looking forward to coming back in February to full-time in United Way. He wishes everyone a wonderful holiday season. I want to thank you, Dr. Holliday and Mr. King, for your commitment to provide quality education to all Kentuckians. And I want to thank the mayor for your leadership in forming Cradle to Career Louisville and your commitment to a Cradle to Career system. This approach, which we are kind of just coming in at the front end for early care and education, builds system leadership, where we work together for the health of the whole system rather than pursuing symptomatic fixes to individual pieces. It is an essential doorway for building trust and shifts us from reactive problem solving to co-creating our future. Our vision is to provide all children, regardless of what zip codes they live in, an equal opportunity for success by implementing a continuum of high-quality early learning services, preparing our children to enter kindergarten, ready to grow, ready to learn, and ready to succeed. Maybe wondering what, let's see, I get here with the technology. Oops. Okay, other way, okay. This convening is relatively new, and we are using the collection, the collaborative action model. And you may be wondering what convening does and what is the convener's role. As the convener, Metro United Way serves as the support organization, bringing individuals, service providers, educators, government officials, funders together to shape the future of early childhood education. Metro United Way is providing $30,000 to support the first phase of our convening work, and really through the generosity of all of you and many others in our community, we're able to invest over $2 million a year in the early care and education work. Since the first meeting on April the 7th, 2014 of this pillar, stakeholders have developed goals, objectives, and indicators. Members self-selected into 4 action networks: sender providers, family and community engagement, communication, and data dashboard and metrics. Over 40 individuals representing these 18 stakeholder organizations are involved in these 4 action teams. The work of the early care and education pillar is transformative and to some extent a startup business. Our challenge is to bring individual providers who have been independent entities for years together to build an integrated, high-quality provider network. And it all starts with data. As this slide says, in God we trust, but everybody else bring data. And so our first step was to look at the Jefferson County profile. And what we found in Jefferson County profile is that we have 50,000 plus children ages 0 to 4 in Jefferson County. 14 as the little vignette as we started this, as the young man who put the graduation cap on his head. 14 to 18 years from now, these children will be our future. 50%, 52% of our children, as the mayor said, enter kindergarten in Jefferson County ready to learn. We have 26% of those children are living in poverty. 48% are not entering kindergarten ready to learn. And then in a more near-term segment, 19,354 children, 3 or 4 year children, live in Jefferson County. We have about 4,700 children who are attending public funded child care. So you can see the gap between that number and the number of 0 or 3 to 4 year olds that we have. And there are 591 child care centers in Jefferson County. So as we look further into the deeper part of this, we looked at the high need zip codes, and we picked 7 zip codes to focus our work on. There are 10,000 plus children in these 7 zip codes. They represent 20% of the 0 to 4 population in Jefferson County. 56% of these children live in poverty. They represent 41% of all children living in poverty in Jefferson County. Child care centers are 175 in these 7 zip codes. They represent 30% of the total child care centers throughout Jefferson County. We pay our teachers an average of $9.76 an hour in our child care centers. I hope you're grasping the size and complexity of this opportunity. Our community is not unique in this particular situation. Other communities have taken this challenge and are building high-quality learning systems, and I am confident that we, in the next year and the next 2 years and 3 years, will be on the same level as these communities. Tulsa, Oklahoma, for one, who is noted to be a high-caliber program, pay their teachers $42,000 on average. They invest $7,500 per child, which is just $4,000 less than the junior kindergarten tuition at collegiate. So I am confident our community can do the same. Our goal is that as 77% of Jefferson County children will be kindergarten ready. It sounds crazy that we could do that in 5 years, but being bold, using best practices, and engaging with communities who have models will lead us to this goal. Our sub-goals are the engagement of parents and providers, more access to children in high-quality programs is our goal. Our summary slide, much like Ted's, is like this. There is a handout on the table to talk about that, but there are many opportunities that we are starting. Some of these are very small ones. It's getting to know people in those zip codes. It's looking at what they think about and not what we are going to go in and say, this is what you should do. We have several gaps and concerns. The first one is the engagement and public and sustainability. To transform early care and education, we must create public will to do so. We must demonstrate what the impact of not having children is on our economic development in this community. We must find child care providers who have the heart and are wanting to increase the quality of their program for years to come. We're creating in terms and we must have significant resources. The mayor mentioned some of these. Public-private and innovative funding approaches must be used. Salt Lake City was the first in America to receive the Social Impact Bond Fund, targeting early childhood education. Brown-Forman is developing a pay-for-success impact bond fund as I speak. The Healing Place and Metro government will be part of the first opportunity for that. And I have met with Rob Frederick at Brown-Forman and said, I would really like early care and education to be the second opportunity as we're going through that. It's been a very interesting learning process over the months that I've been able to be a part of that group. Second, nonprofits must collaborate and submit joint funding requirements to our funders, both locally and nationally. We must look like an integrated, active system to do that. We have private sector business involvement that we need, and I would say that our goal is that I want the same caliber of talent that 55K has on its board to be aligned with our early care and education. In the end, here's some little things that are going on. The libraries, are taking hold in a lot of community, or a lot of 40210. These are where parents can drop by, pull a book out of the library, read it, bring it back, or take it and keep it. The barbers and book piece started about 3 weeks ago, where we found 3 barbers who agreed to put books in their barber shop so that parents can read to their children while they're waiting for their haircut. So investing in our youngest children, helping them to learn, grow, and succeed is one of the most important opportunities we have. Education is the pathway out of poverty, and education and an educated citizenry drives economic development, and economic development provides a better life for all. This is the ultimate outcome from our Cradle to Career program.
Thank you, Gil. You were 30 seconds over, but we're going to give that to you, the grace period. And I'll invite Jonathan to come up. Please give Joe, our community's best wishes for his speedy recovery and return. Similarly, Dr. Hargens was not able to be here today. She had a death in her family, and so is with her family. But Jonathan Lowe is here to speak on behalf of JCPS. Thank you.
Thanks very much. As Ben said, Superintendent Harden's father passed away this past week, and she's with her family, remembering his legacy and his importance in her life and the life of her family. So I'm going to be giving a status report on Jefferson County Public Schools' efforts in our part of the 4 pillars, moving the whole community forward. And as Mary Gwen had said, there were 4 guiding questions that we were asked to look at. The first was, what data did your group use to guide the discussion? And those were academic achievement, graduation rate, college and career readiness, and the number and percentage of graduates that are going to college in summer melt. And we'll be talking about the outcomes that are connected to that data. And then also, what were the 3 top concerns and gaps that we saw based on that data? And one, as has been mentioned before, we've seen a number of instances of positive movement with the academic achievement and outcomes for our students, but it really isn't fast enough to hit the goals and the targets that we have. So the rate of improvement is important. Also, that question about college-going rate, we actually have, for the number of graduates we have, a smaller number that are actually deciding to go on to post-secondary education. And then also the achievement gap, particularly for African-American students, remains a significant issue. So based on those concerns and gaps, I'll be talking about action steps. So just as an example, looking at some data about the rate of achievement, academic achievement, this is data from the state assessment system, looking at achievement points. And as you can see, over the last 3 years, we've seen improvement at the elementary level and middle school level, and a little bit less at the high school level, but overall positive improvements in academic achievement. One of the things that's interesting to note when you're looking at that is think about the role that implementation of the Common Core may have in that. We're thinking that the more rigorous standards that are being used and implemented in our schools is actually helping to drive improvement in that way. So a little bit deeper in the data, this is the percentage of students who are proficient or distinguished in reading and mathematics on the statewide assessment. As you can see, the top level 3 slides are regarding all students in Jefferson County Public Schools, and then the second tier are for African American students. For elementary and middle school, you can see that the trajectory is overall positive, but still below the targets that have been set for us by the state. In high school, we have a somewhat troubling look where our goals and targets do not meet what we're seeing on the ground. For African American students, we see a similar trend, but again, there is a gap between students overall and African American students that is very concerning, and we have strategies there we're working to address it. Regarding college going and summer melt, this slide shows, the green bars show the number of kids who are graduating, and then the blue bar is showing those that enroll in college the first year after graduation, and then the purple line is showing the percentage of students that are enrolling in college after graduation. So we have an increase in the number of students that are graduating, but a lower percentage of those students who are choosing to go on to post-secondary education. We're trying to track our progress both against the goals and targets that we set internally by our board, by what the State Board of Education has for our goals and targets on statewide assessments, but also the 55,000 degree goals. And as you can see, we're not moving forward fast enough on college going rate for our graduates, although looking at nationally, we're at the 75th percentile for high minority urban public high schools. The trend for African American students, again, reflects a gap that needs to be addressed and focused on, because we're not hitting those targets either. This is a little bit more deeper dive into the data about summer melt, which is essentially the difference between kids who completed a FAFSA, which is sort of an indicator that they were interested in college, that college was something they were thinking about during high school, and students that actually wind up at the doorstep of a post-secondary institution. And almost 20% of FAFSA filers in 2013 did not actually move on and enroll in a college. And we have a breakdown by race and ethnicity. Interestingly, these are low-income kids. A lot of them are which is Pell eligible, and CAP and KDG are financial aid, need-based financial aid structures. So there are a lot of kids that would have financial aid available to them if they were interested in going to college. A majority of them are first-generation, potentially college goers, where that's not part of the experience that they've had in their lives. And interestingly, 18% had an ACT score of 20 or more, composite score. Those are kids that should be enrolled in post-secondary education. Absolutely, we have to make sure that happens. So this shows the graduation rate, and actually we are looking like we're pretty much on target for our goals overall, where our target for 2014, we're just kind of, the green line is showing that we're hitting our targets. Again, for African American students, we're doing fairly well with that rate as well. And again, college and career readiness, overall, we're hitting our targets that we've been moving forward on. However, is not the case for our African American students. Again, with all subpopulations that we're working with, or most of them, we're seeing positive trajectories. They're just not moving fast enough to kind of overcome the gap. We also wanted to identify some of the, or just note that one of the key components of what we need to be doing is making sure that we have engagement and involvement of stakeholders. And this is just an example of the number of external places where out-of-school time learning is taking place. We have over 8,200 students that are participating in that and trying to provide a richer environment for learning beyond the school day so that they get services. That's a place where we'll be working on doing some more. So next steps, we connect this back to our strategic plan. Generally speaking, our mission is to make sure that all students are prepared and ready to succeed and thrive throughout their lives. And we try and use our strategic plan as sort of a guiding document to help us move through these the obstacles that we face and the challenges that we need to meet. I only have a set of them here. There is a single page document that sort of summarizes our strategic plan and all of the strategies that we use for that. But just to connect back to the things that we're hoping to work on to get to the place of having a linked and combined set of interventions for increased learning, which is really connected to increased academic achievement as we measure it. We're working hard on making sure that there's responsive and differentiated instruction in all schools and a really robust professional learning community, professional development structure so that teachers are looking at individual students. And actually, if you think about it, to close the achievement gap, what you really need to do is individualize interventions. If you just look at a group of students, that's really not going to be able to move the needle. So all of the conversations that are happening in schools about how to close the achievement gap are really about what to do with particular students and their particular needs. We want to make sure that every student has equal access to learning opportunities, and there are a variety of ways that we're working on that, but making sure that students are being met where they are and providing the services and interventions that they need to succeed. One of the things that our academic and curriculum folks are focusing on is a real hard focus on what's being called the third grade pledge, which essentially is making sure that we use every instrument in our power to focus on literacy and make sure that every student is reading at the third grade level, on grade level by the third grade, that we think is a really powerful way to drive some of the gaps further on before that. That gets connected back to early childhood and readiness for kindergarten. If you have a set of kids with the community-wide work that needs to go on there that are coming in ready to learn when they enter kindergarten, that's a huge step toward meeting our goal of universal literacy by the third grade. If we get that far, we're really going to, I think, see the needle move on a number of measures over time. The second, on graduation and beyond, we want to make sure that students who are graduating are actually connected to a career that they care about, that's connected to the workforce needs of our community, that's linked with, something that's going to bring the benefits that a higher wage job can bring to their family and community. We're working hard on strengthening our career themes that we have in our high schools. We have a network of career theme pathways. We're working hard with GLI and Kentuckiana Works to make sure that those themes are linked to the workforce sectors that are important to our community and where the opportunities lie, and to make sure that we're learning from business about what they need and making sure that our graduates are ready to jump in there and succeed. And then on stakeholder involvement and engagement, I gave you that big long list of 156 places where out-of-school time learning is going. I think there's also another kind of stakeholder involvement and engagement that's more directly connected to workforce, where there's an opportunity for JCPS to build upon the work that's already occurring to bring business professionals and into our schools and help develop curriculum and make sure it's stronger and connected, and also to bring students and also teachers externally into the business community where they can learn about what real life on the ground business practice is and the opportunities that are there. So with that, I will say thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That was amazing. We are officially 1 minute ahead of schedule. So can I get one final round of applause for all of our speakers? If you're going to have a relentless focus on data, one of the things that we should think about is what are the successful metrics for a meeting, a convening of community people like this. One of them is whether or not you are able to be on time, and the second is whether or not people are actually engaged in the process. And I think a metric for that is percentage of people who are on their phones. And I will note that we did a remarkable job of these speakers of keeping people from being engaged with them and not engaged on their phones. So thank you guys so much for that. So what we're going to do right now is take 10 minutes to frantically check our phones, get lunch outside, do whatever you need to do to take care of your biological needs, and we will reconvene at 12:38 right here. Bring lunch back.
So let me tell you something. We're now working with 75 communities across the nation. We're a national foundation. I'll tell you about us all in a second. But as Mary Gwen said, Lumina's working now to mobilize communities around the attainment agenda. We are able to do that because of places like Louisville, and I would say actually Louisville specifically. Your work on higher education gives us the courage to know that it can work, that it does sing to people, that it can actually make a difference. So Louisville is a national exemplar in this movement. You're doing so. And indeed, I would say you are leading the pack on any number of factors, not only attainment-wise, but in thinking systematically about the problems you face as a community and addressing them at every single tick, right? And I also want to give big kudos to the mayor. He came and talked to our group over the summer. We had about 300 people in the room, and he came and talked in a way that was kind of astounding to us. Not because we didn't know it was going to come, but because he used words like economic development, education, industry growth, and compassion in the same sentence, right? In the same paragraph. And honestly, we don't hear that enough, because education is about all of those things. But without that lens of doing right by the people in our communities, we leave a big part of why this is all working behind. So I want to give the mayor big kudos for his leadership on all of this as well. So, all right. I'm going to apologize in advance because I have a toddler and live in a petri dish and might need a cough drop halfway through all this. So what is Lumina Foundation? We are the nation's largest private foundation devoted exclusively to post-secondary access and success. So we're based up in Indy, so I drove down through your never-ending construction zone this morning, and I'm really, really pleased to be here. So what we are about is attacking this problem of educational attainment on all fronts. We have 8 strategies. I run one of them. So we are really very literally approaching this from a 360 perspective, ensuring that many more people have the financial, academic, social preparation to go, that institutions are doing the best they can for students while they're enrolled, that we get adults back, and that the system itself transforms into a 21st century system designed to meet 21st century students' needs in a 21st century workplace. Okay? So we're not unambitious people, and we have aligned ourselves around this little green dot in the corner here, Goal 2025, at 60% of Americans with a high-quality degree or credential by the year 2025. Right now we're around 40, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So the pipeline here, as I say, is not just leaky. It's entirely broken, right? If you were running oil, you would be fretting about this, but because it's kids, we're a little late to the game. For every 100 ninth graders, ultimately 21 graduate on time from college. So we lose people at every turn. For racial ethnic minorities, low-income students, this pipeline is even more broken. What you don't see in that little circle down there, for whatever reason, is that that's why this leaky pipeline within the post-secondary system is we have 36 million adults right now with some college, no degree, meaning they started college but did not finish. About 1/3 of those have the credits equivalent to an associate degree. So, onto that. Oh, hey, there it is. So how do we get to the goal? This is why your conversation this morning is so incredibly important. You are thinking systemically about this. We know that if we increase high school graduation and college participation rates, not to 100%, but merely to the rates of the top performing states, we can contribute another 3.6 million degrees annually, all else equal. We know that if public college completion rates increase to that of top performing states, and those completion rates are actually probably much lower than you think they are, we can add another 5.3 million. Adults, first time in college, an additional 3.5% enrollment, we can increase it by 1.5 million. Bring back part of those 36 million people who started but didn't finish, another 3.6 million. And finally, if we start counting certificates for the high quality, relevant credentials that they are, we'll add another 10 million credentials to this count. That's how we get to the goal, meaning we know we can't get through high school, that traditional age population alone. If we graduated every single kid in our system, sent every single one of them to college, and they all graduated from college, we would still not have enough students to meet the goal. Our demographics do not support it. So, how did we come up with 60% in the first place? Well, you know, we work at a foundation. We like to talk a lot and sometimes make stuff up. But turns out it's actually born in the data. We know that the economy is going to require at least this many people by not 2025, but 2020 with some form of post-secondary credential. So we are trying to meet the needs of the economy. I also just want to double down and say by attainment, we don't just mean bachelor's degrees and above. We mean associate degrees, and we mean those sub-associate credentials and certificates that provide living wages and are tied to a field of study. Here's where we are right now. We're at about 40%, and we've been about at 40% for a really, really long time. We've ticked up very slightly in the last couple years. We're up about 1.5 percentage points since 2008. We think if we, maybe adopt better immigration policies, where we're actively recruiting talented individuals from other countries, right? Often via companies. If we start counting high-quality workforce relevant certificates, we can move this needle pretty darn quickly. But I want to point out there are still a very, very large proportion of our folks who, like I said, started but didn't finish and have never gone in the first place. In some areas, California is particularly hit hard by this. You have remarkably large populations who never even finished high school. Their problems are very different. Here's how we've moved in the last several years. You'll see that there's some bright spots in this, but it's not moving very quickly. It takes a whole lot to move a national figure like this. The good news is that the degree attainment rate among the young population, that 25 to 34, those awesome millennials we all keep talking about, is ticking up at a little bit faster rate. So what do we know that's going to happen in the next 10 years or so? We are going to lose the largest population bubble our nation has ever seen. Who's going to fill those jobs? Hopefully these people, hopefully the millennials. If they can attain at the rates that they need to replace those individuals who are retiring, we will be in better shape than we would have otherwise. So, also, internationally, where do we stand now? We're not number one, so put away your foam hands. We actually rank 4th in the world among industrialized nations in terms of educational attainment. We're outpaced by Canada, Japan, Israel. I'll point out a lot of folks have a lot of skepticism about the need to increase attainment. And they say, I can write a degree on the back of a McDonald's wrapper, and that'll be fine. Well, what we know from other countries, Korea, for example, they have increased their attainment rate significantly, very, very quickly, 5 percentage points last year. More importantly, those increases in attainment were accompanied by corresponding increases in numeracy and literacy among those graduates. So there is something to be said about all of this work on attainment being tied to skills, knowledge, and ability. We need to keep the high quality credentials in the fore. We're not just talking about pieces of paper. I like to point this out because even though this is a bit of a wonky slide, it means something. I mentioned earlier that our young population is slightly out-attaining our older population, but we don't look like other countries, right? Our young people are right about the same as our oldest workforce population, right? Unlike people like countries like Korea, Japan, Ireland, Finland, where you see gigantic growth between these age ranges. This is the American dream here. We all want our kids to do better than we did. This is how we get there, by making sure that our kids have more opportunities than we do, making sure our kids are in better systems than we were, and providing them all the opportunity that we can. And this is a slide that makes me sad, right? What this shows is that the rate of bachelor attainment for young people from the highest income quartile has doubled over the last 40 years, from 40 to almost 80%. It's also almost doubled for people from the lowest income quartile, from 7 to 11%. This means that every attainment gain we've made in the last 4 years has been among wealthy individuals. Wealthy individuals are often multiple generation college goers, meaning they've got family support. They're often white. And obviously they're wealthy because they're in this group, all right? This is at the heart of the mayor's statement this morning about social inequality. We really need to focus on these young people from the lowest income quartile and raise the bar for them so we can give them a fighting chance to compete in our economy. So, we had an interesting conversation with some of the funders in the room this morning about what college kids look like, what college folks look like now. And some of what Mary Gwen said was actually really heartening about the number of degrees that have been awarded to adult students. Because probably many of us in the room went to a 4-year campus. We maybe lived on campus. You're surrounded by folks who came from similar backgrounds to you than you. Well, you are now in the dramatic minority. About 17% of those of college enrollees right now look like that, going to a 4-year campus, living on campus, coming from moderate, high-income families. 17%. The rest are working, have families, first in their families, they're low income, they're struggling, they're jumping from campus to campus. Colleges don't look like they used to. Really? Okay. He just gave me the 5 sign. What? I was just getting going. All right. I mentioned the 36 million, and we also know about the chronic attainment gaps that we pointed out earlier. This should blow our minds. We know that our white population is not growing. Latino population will explode, is already exploding. Our African American population is growing at a rate far faster than white population. So we cannot either afford or morally endorse systems that create this kind of problem. And here's what happened during the recession. This is what puts it all in stark relief. During the recession, people with college degrees actually gained jobs. The stories that you heard about the PhD cab driver, the master's degree bartender are wrong. Statistical anomalies, right? Outliers. What you had were more jobs created during this recession for people with college degrees than were there before the recession. Every job that was lost during the recession was lost by somebody without a college degree. And since the recession has ended, people without college degrees have lost even more jobs. Things are different now. Production jobs are not coming back, at least the ones that don't require some sort of education and training. So why are we working in cities? Well, that's where the people are. So we know that about 66% of the nation lives in the top 100 metro areas, and we know about 3/4 of the economy run through our metro areas. So it just makes sense that you would care about your talent. So that's why we're here. So I was asked to talk a little bit about the completion agenda. I talked about the problems quite a bit. Nancy Cantor is a wonderful woman, former chancellor of Syracuse University, go Orange, that's where I went, and now chancellor of Rutgers, Newark. I was telling the group this morning, Rutgers in Newark is facing major attainment gaps. Their current attainment rate is hovering somewhere south of 20%. Their goal by 2025 is to increase attainment by 25%. So, important for every single city to set goals that are relevant, meaningful, and attainable for all of you. Newark can't get to Louisville's 50%, can't get to your 55% in the next 10 years, 15 years. But Nancy talks about something, she calls it creating a farm team, right? Post-secondary institutions for a long time have been in a zero-sum game, where there's a limited number of high-achieving, high-income students, and every college wants them, right? And we all go buffalo hunting for those same kids and outbid each other, providing all of that aid. What she says is you need to stop looking out and start looking where you live, creating the talent you need from within in order to feed your systems and turn it out to people who are going to impact the same kids just the same way you did. This is what she says. And I think it's so incredibly important that this has got to become the new leadership paradigm for higher education in this nation. I like this slide because it really shows what happens at a community level, right? You all point, I don't think you guys do this actually. Not anymore. A lot of communities do. We blame each other for our own shortcomings instead of looking within and making the change, being the change. This is from Albuquerque, actually. They're another one of our partners. So here's where we are. We're in all 75 of these cities, ranging from New Hampshire to Southern California, Miami to Seattle. And like I said before, Louisville is a bright spot among them because of your work at a systems level. As a part of the Community Partnership for Attainment, obviously there's money involved because we're a funder and we love to fund. There's also a high level of technical assistance available. Mary Gwen provides her leadership to a group of local leaders. They provide their leadership to her, and it's turning out to be a wonderful symbiotic relationship. I want to call it Kathy Zandona as well, who's attached to some of the organizations we're working with, including the Graduate Network and the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives. She's also a tremendous asset to our group. So, I want to shift the conversation now to strategies. Louisville enjoys a really great relationship with its business community. Many communities do not enjoy that really highly productive relationship with their business communities. In fact, the business folks are invited to the table as critical friends and turn into critics very, very quickly. So, what can businesses do to increase the attainment agenda directly? We're taking a pretty narrow slice of this pie and saying every year businesses invest hundreds of billions of dollars. In fact, many times the amount of money the federal government invests in Pell in education and training. What if they turned those dollars that they spend anyway into credentialed work? Meaning, everything is for credit. No more non-credit continuing education stuff that doesn't create a degree or credential out of it. Providing clear pathways that link credentials to growth, promotion, salaries. Utilize prior learning assessment. And if your institutions don't recognize it, go elsewhere. Walk with your money. I'm talking to businesses here. Tuition assistance is better than tuition reimbursement. Tuition reimbursement is better than nothing. But imagine if you're making $8 an hour, how do you write a check for $5,200? It's not going to happen. Help identify workers who are close to a degree so we, as a community, can pull them back in, and provide guidance, support, and counseling to returning students. That's about creating supply. Creating demand is different stuff. Using job advertisements, the burning glass work that Ted talked about a little earlier. You need to list credentials so people know what you want. We also need employers to be much more transparent when they say, you're not meeting our needs. Well, what are your needs? Tell us what they are, and don't say critical thinking, right? Don't say show up on time. Say, here's what I need. Be very specific about it. And finally, use your resources to drive change. we know what works, right, in getting students ready for, into, through college, and particularly adults, and these are here. But I want to talk a little bit more in depth about some things that I really think are potential. In fact, the organization that works with us to do these things calls them game changers. Because I think that our work here together, who's from a university? Okay, you folks, raise them high, be proud. You folks can create degrees. None of the rest of us can. Everything that we're doing around here is circling around the student, around the system to support, empower, do all of that work. Only the institution can grant the degree. So I'm going to focus these next couple slides on the institution, things that we think are proven practices to get more students through college with a credential. What we need from higher education is active partnership, humble leadership, right? Commitment to self-improvement, as I mentioned. Leadership on policy issues. Nobody's going to outwonk an academic. System change alongside care for current students, so we can't waste time thinking about what's going to happen to the deficit of the students who are currently involved. And finally, these are about people, right? And I think the mayor's comments really doubled down on that. This is about people. We can talk about systems all we want, but these are lives we're talking about with education. So, let's see, I moved back one slide. So 3 big solutions I'm going to talk about. 70% of recent high school graduates need remediation when they enroll in college, particularly community colleges. 70%. Can you believe? So I have to tell a story. I graduated from a little college, or a little high school in northern Michigan. I went to Franklin College, just south of Indianapolis. I took the math placement exam. I placed into the lowest credit-bearing math class in the college. I was measuring the area of a room using a yardstick. I took AP Calculus and I got an A in it. Big disconnect. And I, thankfully, from the skin of my teeth, missed remediation. 10% of the students who take remediation classes get out with a degree, meaning 9 of 10 people never get a degree. And 70% of the students in remedial math never even get to that first credit-bearing course. Often, 2 years in, they've exhausted their Pell, right? They've exhausted any institutional aid. They've often exhausted any family support that they're getting to. So, big time hard. I've also had the opportunity to take a college placement exam. Has anybody else done this? Holy moly. What we are asking from 12th graders, even if they've just taken math, these are incredibly difficult exams. I'm not saying dumb them down, but I'm also saying make them transparent. And if we ever think that our standards are too low, take the Compass math test. I urge you. And unless you're a mathematician, you may find some difficulty. So we're promoting a strategy called co-requisite remediation, meaning right now 70% of students enroll in a 16-week refresher, a 16-week do-over of 10th grade algebra. We're saying enroll them in your college class and provide them the support they need to get through it. That way they can learn with their peers, they can find the areas where they're weak, bolster them, and they don't have to waste the time, money, or energy in languishing in these courses that lead nowhere. So you see in 2 institutions here that have adopted these models, 33% of students got out in the Baltimore City Community College course here under the traditional model. That jumped to 74% under the co-rec model. Austin P in Tennessee went from 11% getting out of the course in quantitative reasoning to 78%. This works for students, enabling them to get into credit-bearing work. This is like a random course catalog guide, right? And it doesn't even matter where it's from or what it's talking about. Navigating a system like this is hard for anybody. See your counselor because this changes by major. Why make the chart in the first place if you got to see your counselor about it? So we say default. You default in to these structured schedules, meaning a student, 18-year-old, is not going to know what kind of prerequisites, co-requisites, structures, anything that they need in order to get their degree accomplished. We're saying make this transparent for them. Because if you opt into a schedule, it's going to take you a whole lot of work to get out of it. And being in it means you're taking the right classes in the right order with the right teachers, and you're going to get your degree on time. Choice can be the enemy sometimes. I know that's not popular to say in the United States right now, but limit the choice and you will improve the options. Georgia State here, as I talked about, since they started these degree mats, grad rates are up 20%. And they're making significant gains with African American students. Finally, structured scheduling. Well, how are you supposed to live, right? Imagine finding childcare for a schedule like this, or holding a job. It's not impossible. So we say build structured schedules. Oftentimes when you're talking about traditional age students, they're coming right out of high school. They know what it's like to go to school from 8 to 3. Keep the pattern up. So this schedule says we're going to go to class every day from 8 until 1. 1 o'clock to whenever is yours. You can work, you can raise your family, you can do what you need to do. CUNY, the City University of New York, doubled graduation rates using this kind of model. Ivy Tech, which is just across the river from you, is doing some pilot programs. They did a structured certificate program, 85% completion rate. Ivy Tech currently hovers around 13% completion rate for its normal programming. So this is a solution that can work, okay? So these are just highly practical, tactical tools to show you the array of options that are out there for your institutions to take ownership of this problem. So I want to double back down on the Louisville situation and say that it is, I'm not joking at all, I'm not being facetious at all, it is literally our privilege to work with you. You are leaders in this. Seeing this today has been so intensely gratifying to me as I work across all of these communities. And I want to thank Mary Gwen for her leadership on all of this. She is really a mentor to other cities, and you should be proud of the work that she and you all are doing. So thank you for that. Thank you.
While we are convening some panelists up here, we've got time for a couple of questions. So I'll invite our logistics elves to move the chairs and invite any questions from the audience right now.
I have a question about, are we making comparisons with these other cities that we want to benchmark ourselves with? Are we trying to make a comparison in how they handle early childhood, or they handle those big pillars that we have, so that we see who's making the most progress and why?
Saying for the peer cities that we've identified, are we also benchmarking not just the outcomes, but also the practices that are happening that might be leading to those outcomes in each city?
We talk about education and economic development a lot at the U.S. Conference of Mayors meetings, and there's very few cities that are kind of approaching this, and I think we heard this from Haley as well, from a systematic kind of standpoint. So some cities have no strategy. They don't need a strategy because they're filled with great universities that are tied into STEM degrees and some of these advanced industry characteristics, so their economies are taking care of themselves. Saying, hey, there's more to this than just 55,000 degrees or K to 12. That's how all this works together. So what everybody is taking a look at, obviously, is median wage, average wage. The reason why we're focused on median wage is, we will report average wage as well, but as you saw by where all the wealth is going, the average wage can be distorted by very few people making a whole lot of money. The median wage, the importance of measuring that, obviously, is that everybody's coming along for the ride as well. It gets more difficult on medium-sized cities like ours because we have to be very specific on where we think we have unique value to add to the economy. Thus, that's why we have those 5 clusters that we focus on. And then so we have to challenge, are those 5 clusters capable of supporting advanced industry characteristics? So an example, e-commerce and logistics. We have lots and lots of warehouse jobs in our city that brings down our median wage. But we also have 185 companies in those logistics industries that if they had internet engineers, software engineers, social media experts that are associated with e-commerce, that is leading edge, advanced industry specific. So what's our economic development strategy around that? How does University of Louisville, let's say, transition Metropolitan College into the premier college for e-commerce? And that's a way where we have to take a look at each one of our clusters to move it forward. So I think I'm answering you a little bit there.
So I'm going to invite Terry Holliday, who is the Kentucky Commissioner of Education, to lead us off. If you've got 5 minutes to talk a little bit about what you see of how we fit into the broader work that's going on in the Commonwealth.
Sure, thank you, and let me tip of the hat to you guys. I've been very impressed with your Cradle to Career work here and the systemic approach that you're taking. We were just chatting, Bob and I, a little bit of comparison with the greater Cincinnati area and their Cradle to Career and the Strive program, I think it is. And you guys have a distinct advantage because you really don't have to deal with, you are the large urban. So Northern Kentucky kind of has to deal with Cincinnati in two different states. So I think you've got a distinct advantage. The governor in last couple of state speeches has used the term Cradle to Career. The governor has been very supportive of the early childhood initiative. And I think if we look back over, his 2 terms, we'd probably reflect on just think what he could have done if he'd had a little bit of money. There's just not been any money. But for next year, we are expanding the preschool slots in 4-year-old programs. We do have a $41 million grant in early childhood. A little difficulty with that because we're having a little difficulty getting the General Assembly to agree on the STARS rating system. Okay for public providers, but not too sure, the Republicans are not too sure they want to support private and church programs having to meet the STARS rating systems. I think that's the major push is early childhood, because if we can get the kids ready for kindergarten, we're going to be much more likely to have them ready by 3rd grade. I think JCPS is right on target with that. That is something we're pushing at the state level. Here's your problem. 50% of the kids are ready for kindergarten. If you look at the end of 3rd grade, 50% of the kids are ready for reaching proficiency. What value are we adding? K-3 is the question for our school districts. What are we doing to make sure that we are helping kids who weren't ready close those gaps by 3rd grade? So I think that's a huge investment, and there's very little accountability for K-3 programs in Kentucky. So that's something we're trying to figure out and trying to push all across the state. Throughout the system, you will hear this year in the General Assembly significant discussion around achievement gaps. That will be a huge issue. Too many of our children are hopeless, and you guys lay it out very well here. As you go, the state goes. 65% of our minority children are in 2 school districts, Jefferson County and Fayette County. 65%. So the better you do, the better I'm going to look. All right? So I'm invested. I'm here. I'm ready to support you, anything I can do. The thing that we're really excited about is the career piece. The governor gave me career and technical education a couple of years. It used to be in the workforce cabinet. So I'm meeting with the governor Monday. I've got a meeting after the first of the year with the Secretary of Labor, Commerce, Workforce Development, Economic Development. I was asking Ted the question, do you have one authoritative source for our job projections? And I'm not sure, you may have it here, but I'm not sure I have it at the state level because I've got so many different players. I was meeting with the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce this week, and they're trying to do similar work. I've got the chamber does this work. I got economic development. I got labor. I got commerce. I got workforce investment boards, and I've got all kinds of different players here in the community technical college system, and where I'm not sure that we could truly identify those growth sectors across the Commonwealth that might be common. Now, every region, like you're adding pieces like logistics and those kind of things that you could really expand upon and grow. That is very exciting to see and exactly what we want to do. So wrap this up, here's what my commitment is. What we're going to be working on with the next 12 to 18 months is an initiative called Kentucky Rising. We want to raise all ships. What we want to do is identify the key sectors in Kentucky for jobs that have a living wage. We want to then work very closely with the business community to identify specific credentials, industry recognized credentials. I'm with you. Don't tell me critical thinking. Don't tell me show up to work. Don't tell me pass a drug test. Tell me exactly what is the industry certifications you need. And then you got to sit down, business. I read an article recently that said business needs to either put up or shut up. And what it means by that is we need business industry, CEOs, to sit down at the table with us and give us where they think the projections are going to be, where the growth's going to be, and give us their HR people to sit down with the community technical college system, sit down with our career technical system, and make sure from ninth grade to doctorate level that we've got a seamless pathway that is clearly identified and kids can get stackable credentials along the way. So I've been to Switzerland recently. We got 23% youth unemployment. They've got 2%. They're doing something right. And what that is helping kids identify much earlier and getting work-based learning opportunities. So I would say you're absolutely on the right track here.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll pass it on to the President of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, Bob King.
Well, thank you very much. I have been watching 55,000 Degrees grow from its infancy. It started right around the time I came to Kentucky. And I have to tell you that this effort provides, I think, a resource in this community that, frankly, I'd like to see across the state in many of our smaller and rural communities. And we've actually done a study about a year ago where that was one of the principal recommendations. This notion of treating all of these separate pieces as an integrated system is exactly right. And I commend the mayor and Mary Gwen and all of you for approaching this challenge in exactly this way. I think it is the right way to go about it. In the higher education community, I love that cartoon that Holly showed with everybody blaming everybody else, right? And so for years we would point our fingers at K-12 and say, how come you guys aren't sending us students that are prepared? And I said to our campus presidents a couple years ago, I said, we do that a lot. I said, but let's think about K-12. What defines that system? It's employees, its teachers, and its principals. Well, who decides who gets to be a teacher or a principal? We do. Who decides what training we give them and what they have to demonstrate in order to earn a degree? So when we complain about them, let's take a look in the mirror. And so part and parcel of what the commissioners just described as Kentucky Rising will be a very significant commitment to revamp the who and how we prepare teachers. It's also going to require us looking at how we compensate them and how they can see career opportunities for themselves that cause them to stay in the profession for more than 3 to 5 years. I was struck by, and I'm familiar with some of the statistics that you've heard during the course of the morning. The attainment levels, the baccalaureate attainment levels, the associate degree attainment levels for people in the upper income quartile is close to 80% of children in those families have reached those attainment levels. And yet for low income and minority citizens, that number's down around 10%. And it has been there for 40 years. It has been there for 40 years despite the fact that we have spent as a country over $500 billion through the Pell Grant system. So we need to figure out a way to make that work better. We need to address this whole question of achievement gaps, and it starts with pre-K and works its way through the elementary and secondary system. And any of the kids who may get through that, and you see the leakage in the pipeline, or not leakage, just the pipeline is like a sieve, but that gap persists in higher education. And frankly, it is heartbreaking because if we expect to compete as a nation, it means we need more people, more highly educated. That more people isn't going to come from the upper income quartile. That's pretty much saturated. So it's got to come from where we have the most opportunity, and the most opportunity, frankly, resides with the neediest of our citizens, but whose academic capacity is just as good and just as robust as the people who are lucky enough to grow up in upper income families. And that is our mutual responsibility. And so just a couple of other points. Many of the strategies that you heard this morning, that Holly articulated, that I think Mary Gwen mentioned, are being embraced by our campuses. Getting kids to take full 15 credit hours a semester, something that we have not done for a very long time, is now being reintegrated into the way our campuses are advising our students. Much greater attention to students instead of, that traditional view of look to your left and look to your right. Those kids won't be here at the end of the semester, and everybody thinks, well, what a great deal. That's not the way we behave anymore. The obligation, in my view, is if we admit a student to one of our institutions, as long as they do their part, we owe them the obligation of doing everything we can to get them to whatever their finish line is. Making our institutions truly student-centered, as opposed to too often being faculty-centered, is at the core of all of this. And last thing, we have been working for a number of years on an idea called Commonwealth College. It is designed to attract those working age adults who have a high school diploma or some college, and get them to come in and get a credential, whether it's an associate degree or a bachelor's degree or more, to make this online, competency-based. We were hoping we'd get it funded last budget cycle. It did not, unfortunately. However, two of our institutions, one of whom is here in Louisville, the other is at Western Kentucky, have agreed to get this going with their own resources. And it will be targeted at this population, start anytime, 24/7. And our hope is that we will expand the degree offerings. The first two that'll be offered are tied to the healthcare industry, and the second to advanced manufacturing, and the curriculum in those programs are being driven and help being designed by people in those business sectors. So we're getting the message, and hopefully we'll be able to accelerate our change to meet your acceleration needs here in Louisville.
Thank you. Haley, we heard some of your thoughts sort of coming into this. We'd love to know any reactions that you have, having heard some of the things from from our panelists and then earlier from some of the speakers.
Well, you did hear from me, so I'm not going to talk very long. I will just say there's one unique thing about Louisville that I didn't point out, and that's that Louisville started with post-secondary. That's not frequent. Often in the cradle to career spectrum, the cradle starts first. And energy peters out very often when you get to the career aspect, right? And I think a lot of it's due to our natures that we love little kids and they're really cute. And somehow when they turn 18, they stop being cute and start being entirely responsible for everything that happens to them. And so I do think it's important that the post-secondary work started first in Louisville and created a place for this work to grow, with the idea that high school is not the finish line. Third grade reading is not the finish line. The credential is the finish line. Your economy is the finish line. That's really important and just something I wanted to tack on to the end of my statement.
First, I'd like to recognize a few folks. Most of my staff is here, and then almost our entire economic development department is here as well. So they obviously wanted to participate because this is the world that they live in. So I want to thank them for being here. Then we've got almost all the school board here as well. So thank you all for getting right in there, and the parochial school system as well. So really appreciate the attendance from everybody here today. And Kentuckiana Works has really helped us with a lot of the research on this. One of the things that we see, a question might be is, well, can we do this? What we see by looking at other cities there are a few cities that have made the transition. Portland is a good example. Austin is a good example. So it can definitely be done, but it requires either lots of good luck, which is really not a great strategy, or intentionality and hard work, which I think is what we're showing here. And usually that produces good luck. And by good luck, I mean, there's a few entrepreneurs that start companies that result in 5,000 or 10,000 great 21st century type jobs. So we have the data and can show you that data of how cities have moved from, let's say, a place far beyond where we were, or regressively, to a better place as well. So that's why we're so focused on a lot of this stuff. And the facts are, everybody knows we compete against other cities for talent. So this is not just something where we can compare ourselves to ourselves. We have to be comparing ourselves to the best cities in the world and seeing what's their acceleration look like compared to our acceleration. And that's the gap that we're obviously so interested in, why we talk about we got to pick up the pace. We've got to accelerate here at the same time. As far as the businesses being involved, what we have to ask for from the business community is to give education another chance. Most businesses have given up on education because the educational system has not produced the right skills at the right time, at the right place. And education has got to recognize that. So when we implore business to get involved, we want another chance. Bring all you got. Education will bring all that they have, and then let's do it right this time. So this is an area where we've all got to work together on something like this. Like Commissioner Holliday, I guess we missed each other, but I was in Bavaria with a few folks about a month or so ago to spend 3 days diving deep into their apprenticeship system. And it was really interesting. Their youth unemployment rate is much lower, obviously, because they have skills and qualifications coming out of their apprentice system, and they're already dual credit, which means they're getting credit in college or in junior and technical colleges, VOTEC type of credit, while they're working at the same time. So they have this linkage with the job, with their employer, which results obviously in a job and then a nice transition at the same time. So that's something that we do not have as many apprentice type programs in our community that we will have in the coming years, and almost every business can develop some type of apprenticeship program, and Ted very nicely showed that from, we don't maybe call them apprenticeships, but work experiences in healthcare at a very high level to a low in the business community. So as we ask our businesses for help, we want to be talking about apprenticeships, we want to be talking about summer works, which is our summer jobs for our disconnected kids that come from families where mom or dad can't call a friend and say, hey, would you give my son or daughter a job for the summer. We've grown from 0 to 2,000 jobs, and we intend to keep going in that area. So that's something that every company can do. Just like every company hopefully can offer a mentor into the community to a kid that's disconnected and doesn't see why he or she should go to college. What's the point? There's no future for me there, but that type of mentoring activity can really change a child's life. In terms of advocacy, obviously advocating at the federal level and the state level, we've got to do that, okay? But the bottom line is we own this as a city. And there is what we call a metropolitan revolution taking place in the country right now. Our cities are where the population is and increasing every day. It's where most all of our innovation, our intellectual property comes out of our city. The GDP, the vast majority comes out of our cities at the same time. So if we can't rely on DC and we can't rely on Frankfurt, I think those are good theories or assumptions that we should say. Calvary's not coming over the hill to help us, okay? So what is it that we can do locally? And if Frankfurt comes in, God bless you guys. If DC comes in after we faint, we'll say God bless them too, okay? But we know we can't control our own backyard. So what are the things that we can do here, both in terms of reducing inefficiencies in the system, but also having community conversations about we want to invest in our youngest citizens, let's say, for early care. And you know what? I think that's a great investment. Now, you might want to call it a tax. I don't care what people call it, but are our kids worth investing in? And drill that conversation home with accountability coming out of that. If we frame the argument in the right way, there are examples from around the country where people say, yes, I want my children to be successful. They should not be some kind of pawn in a political tax debate. So that's up to us as community leaders, both to make the argument, but then deliver the results at the same time. You can't just make the argument and then let it go into some bureaucracy that doesn't get any type of results. Last, since I have the mic, I want to talk about minimum wage debate in the community. Right now, we're having a great debate in the community about where the minimum wage should be accelerated above where the federal minimum wage is, and if so, where should that be? There's a series of states and cities around the country that are attacking this issue. Our city is as well, and as I've stated, I'm for a minimum wage increase. I'm definitely for a federal minimum wage increase, because then we wouldn't have all the drama that we're having here locally. When you attach a minimum wage increase just to our city, all types of unintended consequences take place as a result of that. We have job loss, we have job leakage across borders. So the reason why, if anybody's been reading the news on this, the reason why I indicated that I would veto the council's 1010 wage is because I am not going to gamble with the lives of the 30,000, 40,000 people in our community that are making less than minimum wage. And what's going to happen if that minimum wage is set too high, we will lose jobs. Now, I've been working and studying this issue for the last 6 months. That's why I said a minimum wage increase to the $8.50, $8.75 range, there will be de minimis job loss. So that's kind of the spot where we cannot do damage to these vulnerable citizens that we see on angels trees and all these other things in the community. So it's not just a question of setting the wage and not thinking anything negative is going to happen from that. It is. And I'm just not going to gamble with those type of jobs on people's lives. It's kind of irked me. I'll be honest with you. People say, you say you're the city of compassion. You've got no compassion. Look what you're doing to these people. The least compassionate thing you can do is raise the wage to a point where somebody comes in and says, Mike, you're fired. And I'm not going to gamble with those people's lives. So tomorrow's the vote at the Metro Council, and that's what that's all about. So since I had the mic, I wanted to say it because it ties in a little bit to what we're talking about, right? But the key is to have a pathway out of minimum wage into the type of skills that we're talking about, so you have a living wage. And then go to advanced industry characteristics beyond that, so you have a great middle income and high income life. So there's a little tie in that, so it wasn't too much of a stretch. Thank you.
Someone take the mic quick. So what we're going to do right now is open up to this. We have in this room a pretty strong brain trust of members of our community from a lot of different perspectives. If you have questions for our panelists, either these panelists or our previous panelists, we have a set of rotating elves who will bring mics to you so that everyone can hear you.
Hi, I've been thinking about this since we all started talking about accessibility to the lower income and at-risk folks. How are we addressing, educating, if you will, that whole ecosystem about their accessibility to college? In other words, the Pell Grants and things like that, because, you know, I get a sense that they don't know from the very beginning that they have access to college. You know, it's a really kind of a depressing place. So how are we addressing that these folks get to know that their kids have access and the kids themselves know they've got access?
You have someone, either one of these folks or...
I know something about that.
I don't know.
Yeah. And then Terry, maybe you might have. We have a program with our our least achieving college going rate in our high schools called Close the Deal. So I address those 6 high schools every year. Our percentage of kids moving on obviously is increased significantly. You saw the data on that. We've taken that conversation to another level in the last year by introducing these career pathways, or what I call wage maps. And I talk very clearly to the kids that if you're just going to get a high school degree, basically what you're saying is you're okay living in poverty the rest of your life, because there's no data to suggest other than that. A couple percent of the kids might go beyond that. But we've got to make this next step real to them, so that if they say, for instance, they're in Ford's Next Generation Learning Program, we have that at our 5-star high schools, where they're studying, they're interested in welding, they do a little internship, they're getting starting jobs at $16 an hour, they can go on from there, that they're tying their work to something after that. Or there's another track on that that's an engineering track. So we're just trying to make it much more specific and real for them, with understanding what the consequences are. So Terry, I don't know if you have statewide comment on this, but one of the problems we have is lack of, our ratio of our high school counselors to our kids is abysmally high, you know, to where we can't give that type of dedicated advice that we need to our kids. Am I correct in saying that statewide? Do you want to comment on that?
We've got a statewide strategy, 8th grade, we call it Operation Preparation, and we ask every school district to work with their community to bring in mentors, to meet with 8th graders individually and look at their ILP and say, are you making realistic goals here? Are you planning the right courses and the right pathway through your high school career? And then we do it again at 10th grade. And what 10th grade's about, the same type of business mentors come in, sit down with the kids, and are you on track? And then are you getting ready to think about, you know, college application? And then the lieutenant governor, former mayor, helped us spread the Close the Deal to quite a few of our high schools, and we're continuing to try to expand that. We recently just started publishing the percent of FAFSA completions by school district. So that will help a little bit. A lot of my school districts, they don't like those maps because they don't look too good, but it puts a little pressure on them to complete FAFSAs. And the career pathways work we're doing will certainly accelerate this a great deal. I think the key point the mayor made is about we don't have career counselors. So we got to figure out how to work with community colleges to bring their career counselors to our schools. North Carolina's doing that, Texas is doing that, a lot of other states are doing that, and we've got a few places in Kentucky doing that, but we have got to really beef up our career counseling in high school to help kids make really good choices for the future. Bob, you may have
a couple things. The state of Kentucky is the beneficiary of 2 separate Gear Up grants. These are federal programs Collectively, we serve about 35,000 kids. And essentially what the Gear Up program does is it identifies schools with high proportions of minority and low-income students, essentially takes an entire cohort, an entire 7th grade, and then stays and provides all sorts of support services fundamentally directed at encouraging those kids to be and think to go to college and to take the right set of courses to be college ready. And they follow those kids all the way through to graduation. The other is that the state organization called KIA, which is the Higher Education Assistance Authority, those are the people that do all of the grant administration, the state grants, the CAP grants, the KTG, and the KEYS program, also has an outreach program. They go all over the state, literally to every county, offering career and college advising. As the mayor pointed out, the ratio of guidance counselors to students is something like 1 to about 400 in our schools, or 500. And frankly, the guidance counselors spend more time with testing issues and discipline and have very little time to do the kind of career and college advising that I think all of us would like to see. I'd throw out one suggestion. I was at a conference recently where the former mayor of San Antonio described a program that they created in San Antonio, which essentially was a city-funded career guidance center where even though the high schools weren't doing it and the middle schools weren't doing it, kids could go down to this center and get that kind of advice. And it was provided kind of in a single centralized location. That might be an alternative to what Terry described in terms of colleges doing it. One other thing is there's a program, although it's quite small, called College Coaches, where this is funded through the AmeriCorps program, where we've got kids who are recent college graduates going back to high schools and trying to mentor kids about college attendance.
Mary Gwen.
If I might just add a little bit to that, this is what this CTAN group, our College Transition Action Network, has been looking at, is this the actual data. And unfortunately, our FAFSA completion has been going up. We do have more college counselors in high school, and the college going rate is still going down. So I think what we're really trying to dig into a little bit is its mindset. It's this belief in that these people are talking about me, that I actually might be able to do this. So this is just more of a plea of we need to keep sending those messages that everybody is college material. There are lots of ways to do post-secondary education, but we're talking about everyone, and we've just got to send that message over and over and over again.
Amen.
This is more an observation, Mr. Mayor, and this is more for us local. I like the idea of cradle to career. But when I look at this, I see about maybe 6 to 8 hours a day of our children being engaged in some school building. But what about the other 16 hours? Then they go back to the neighborhood. And I think that's where an opportunity that maybe a box needs to be here or an area need to be here, or what's going on in the neighborhood where most of our children are coming from. High stress, environment, dilapidatedness, and I know we're working on some of those with the Vacant and Abandoned Properties Initiative. But if we're gonna track this in terms of how we're doing, I think we ought to be tracking that as well. And I think that we send kids back to those, and they spend more time. They go home, get love, and then come outside that house and see a dilapidated this or stress this or stress that, And I think we have to find a way to innovatively measure that, And I know you've chatted about that. But I think that if we're going to go here, we need to have some kind of way of measuring that as well.
I think you're right on there, Ben, and a couple things. One is, so when we talk about out of school time, those are the programs there. And what's been interesting, we've been starting to receive a couple grants recently that our responses have been an overlap of our work here in the Cradle to Career with our Safe and Healthy Neighborhood activity that addresses exactly what you're talking about, because what you just referred to, I'd call the system of life, right? And so we can address the Cradle to Career system, we got the built environment system, we got the criminal system, and I think you're right on there, and that's how these various things work together here. Did you have a comment there, Sadiqa? Okay. But well said, and I would like to think we're working on that. Of course, you're in safe and healthy neighborhoods. Good point.
I'd like to commend everyone for talking about this in an economic development kind of way, because that's really what it is to me. If we keep talking about it as a social justice, it will just never happen. The other thing I think is that it is imperative.
This is Judge Sadiqa Reynolds, who's the Chief of Community Building for the City of Louisville.
All right, thank you. I also think that it's imperative that we make contact with the media on this. We're saying that there are people who need to be educated and can be educated, but we have images every single day going out that don't reflect that, don't tell people that. So you got the folks who need the education and the ones who you need to believe in you, and there is a huge disconnect. So we have got to hold folks accountable outside of just the ones represented here, and I think that is very, very important.
Yes, I just had a question for you two. Sorry, I don't have your names.
Rena Sharp.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Rena Sharp. I actually chair the Kentuckiana Works Board for the city. My husband's actually a high school teacher, and he's been teaching for about 15 years. He actually left a management job in a very high-profile company here in Louisville to teach school, so he's one of those that really loves teaching. And he's really getting disenchanted with it the last few years, just because he feels like that he is just teaching the ACT test. So, I would just say that in the restructuring, maybe, I don't know if there's any thought going in. I'm not saying take away the ACT, but if you have kids every day and their teachers are focused so highly on how they're going to do on the ACT test, it leans to they're probably disengaged. Most people don't like testing, at least I don't like testing. And so then you're asking them to go to college. You want them to be excited and interested, in school, and then they're getting this kind of drummed into them, every day. The mayor mentioned apprenticeships, through the high school. I'm a big fan of that, of getting them engaged in things that they're going to enjoy, that's going to get them excited about going on either directly into a good career, or hopefully on the path to be able to even get a 4-year degree. But I'm just curious what the future looks like for that, and how do we get that off the top of the agenda instead of getting kids excited and engaged and learning and not just how to do well on a test.
Yes, what we have for career ready and college ready, ACT is like the basis just for the academic component. However, we've added measures over and above that to allow kids multiple opportunities. We've added the Compass, which is online, give them 2 free administrations. We've added the college placement assessment. And the beauty in Kentucky is higher education and K-12 work together to agree on what those cut points are. But that's just the academic piece. For career ready, we've added significant measures like industry certifications and work keys, and for military, armed services vocational aptitude battery. Now, I'm criticized quite often for adding multiple measures by people who think that the ACT is the only measure that should matter. But I would predict in the near future, the state board, that's one of their agenda items this year, is to really start getting at deeper learning. And what would deeper learning look like in these career pathways that we're talking about? And that's why it'd be so critical for business to give us those skills and those work-based learning opportunities. It's very difficult for us to get kids into work-based learning opportunities because business usually has barriers that we've got to help them overcome, like wage and labor laws, and they're worried about the 18 thing, and there are plenty of ways to work around that. We're just not getting the word out to all the business how to work around that, and we're not getting business to really help us define those very specific skills. But you'll see in the next few years a lot of movement around deeper learning measures, a balance. And our accountability model also includes measures of arts, humanities, practical living, physical education, world language, coming soon. So we've got a lot of different measures that are not test-based. As a high school teacher, I could see where they would have that kind of concern, because that's kind of how the high schools get measured. The ACT's kind of the foundation for that. So I commiserate, but tell him to hang on. I think there are changes coming.
We're going to take one more community comment, and then we're going to let the mayor wrap up.
Hey, thanks. I'm David Jones, and I am a member of both the 55K board and the Jefferson County Public School Board. And this is really kind of a request for help or best practice guidance. In the 55K hat, I'm leaving here with some really concrete examples about what I ought to be talking to President Ramsey, President Newberry about in the post-secondary landscape. I mean, what are you all doing about streamlining pathways and setting default settings so that students don't wander around? And, you know, what are you doing to change scheduling to adapt to life? But in my K-12 school board member hat, you know, and I guess I should say, like probably most people in this room, I believe that you have to focus if you're going to get anything accomplished in a big organization. It's really hard to know what the focus should be in the K-12 system, and to quote some of the panelists' comments, don't tell me to improve college and career readiness, and don't tell me to improve pre-K, because that's not what the system, those are kind of outcome targets, and we can't just sit around all year and measure and wait for the one magic number that comes out. So what are the 3 or 4 things that a big urban school board ought to be focused on day in and day out, getting real measurements out of? Right now the state mandates that we track umpteen hundreds of data points. We have a full compliance agenda, but those quality changes are very hard to define. So input welcome.
Haley, can I ask you to take that on and do it very quickly?
I will try. Sorry? Okay, yes, I'll be very quick. So I would say you're right about the focus. K-12 is incredibly diverse. Each system looks different. You've got multiple leaders, multiple districts in the same community, all of that. I would start, first of all, by looking at math course taking. 4 years of high school math is a very, very solid predictor of post-secondary success. And also, it's a good success measure for anybody who wants to get into a 4-year institution, has to have 4 years of high school math, okay? There's one. I would look at ensuring that exit exams for high school are paced against entry exams for post-secondary, and if the option does not exist for a student to remediate while they're in high school, create one when it's free for the student and doesn't use Pell eligibility. And I would also say that the layers of preparation that are needed within the high school are academic. You cover those with your standards and all of your work. They're social, meaning a student has to have a stable adult in their life or a stable peer in their life who has a post-secondary experience or goal. And they're also financial. So you have to include things. I did want to mention to your comment, FAFSA completion is a strong predictor of post-secondary attendance. It is not a strong predictor necessarily of post-secondary completion. Okay, so ensuring that you're combining your FAFSA completion efforts, your financial wraparound services, all of that, which is best done at a local level, not at the state level. because you can enlist your H&R Block offices, your TurboTax offices to help the parents prepare the FAFSA while they're doing their taxes, and you can do that. State, very difficult time getting all the way from up there to down on your street, right? But it's got to be academic prep, social prep, financial prep, with those key little factors.
I'd offer one other comment. And I saw this, my previous work in New York, but large city school districts tend to hire late. And as a consequence, the very best graduates coming out of the teacher prep programs have already been scooped up by other districts. Change your hiring practices.
Well, I've never been bashful with you guys, so I won't be now. We pushed for you guys to have in JCPS a curriculum audit. PDK did it. They told you had too many things, you needed to focus. They gave you some suggestions. I applaud Donna for asking the state auditor to do the same thing. He gave you a few measures and suggestions, so and some good benchmarks you could, systems you could look at. I think the number one thing is the interventions you provide to your K-3 when kids are not on track. What are you providing? Which ones are working? How much money are you spending? And quit doing the ones that aren't working and put your money into the ones that are. That'd be the first place to start. And then I'd quickly move to the high school senior transition courses to make sure the kids who are not ready are getting those remediation courses in high school for free and are reaching CCR, and you've been doing a good bit of that. So those are the first two things I'd probably advise you to look at.
Mayor, can you bring us home? I'd like to just take a second. Sorry, can I just take a second to...
Yeah, how about a round of applause for the panel? Good job.
We thank the James Frank Brown Foundation who provided this space and our lunch. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'll be brief, but I want to thank also the 55K board. This is a 55K board meeting. Thank them for letting us open up and talk about this much broader system that I think we'll be talking more about here in the community. We certainly have learned from 55K in terms of the impact that a collective impact model can make on this. So as we leave here, for those of you all that are interested in helping, please let us know, Mary Gwen or myself, Tony, and then we'll be reaching out to some of you all as well. So there's obviously a lot of work left to do here, that this was just the beginning of a conversation to do this. I'm planning to pull all the pillars together again in about 6 months. So we'll be doing this twice a year to see how we're progressing in each of these areas. And we might have a collective impact model. We'll be talking to the foundations about any ideas that they may have as well. So this is not just done and then we'll get together in 6 months. We're working on this every day. So thanks everybody for coming here. I like to close meetings with a couple successes. So I want to talk about one and then we'll have a presentation on the other. Ben Ruiz is here. A lot of people know Ben in the background. Ben's been a tremendous leader in the community and oftentimes frequently focusing on our Latino community. Ben and another group of Latino leaders, Leo Calderon and Saul Garcia, formed Behold 1,500 Latinos about a year, 18 months or so ago to say we own 1,500 of the 55,000 degrees. So just yesterday, Ben sent me an email and announced that Behold 1,500 Latinos has announced a scholarship award program. It's a $101,000 scholarship aid to Latino students in our community. Yesterday they pulled together $6,000 already for that. So we've got $94,000 more to go. So anybody that would like to help Behold 1,500 Latinos, I'm sure Ben would be more than happy to help you. And I think Susan Berry at the Community Foundation is as well. So thank you once again for stepping up. Ben Ruiz, good job. And then we've got some more exciting news here to show how this continues to grow. So John, are you going to come up? We want to, and let's see, yeah, we have 15K, come on up. So congratulations to 15,000 Degrees and Churchill Downs for entering into a program partnership called Win the Race. You going to tell us about Win the Race here? Win the Race stands for Resources, Applications, Career, and Engagement. And this program will be designed to capture the attention of and help the members of 15K, so our African American community who need to finish college and then win the education attainment race. Get it? Race. Through 4 targeted efforts. Here to present the award from Churchill Downs, and John, thank you all for standing up. It is from Churchill Downs is John Asher, who's done so much here for the community. We really appreciate that. Okay.
I want to introduce Dana Johnson. For those of you who don't know her, she's our Senior Director of Corporate Responsibility with Churchill Downs Incorporated. And she will present not only the big check, but the important one, the smaller one. So we'll try to. So, hey, Gwen, who's coming up for this? Come on in.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Churchill Downs Incorporated, our foundation, we were excited to receive the proposal and want to show our support to this initiative for the community.
Just want to say on behalf of Churchill Downs, and in fact, walking in this room, I see so many people I've known, so many friends, so many people at least I know of, and people I wish I knew. What a great room this is. I wish we had gotten here a little earlier in just the last 10 minutes or so to hear this great discussion. But thank all of you for your support for 55K. 15K is incredibly important to us. All these programs are incredibly important to us. Our company has been here since 1875. So much for your work, and let me remind you, as I am contractually bound, that it is 136 days until Kentucky Derby 141. It is a joy. We've actually been distributing checks in a few places today, and I got to say, at this time of the year when people are getting their their Derby invoices and things like that, it's good to make people smile at this time of year. So thanks so much for your hard work and your dedication, and Churchill Downs, as a longtime corporate citizen here, greatly appreciates it. Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dana. Thank you, John. Is there anybody else that would like to give out any money here today? Hearing none, I just want to say thank you again to all of our panelists, everybody coming to town, all of your